authorities.
All right, Amanda, Senator Amanda Stoker, what do you make of that?
Well, it is important that we are empathetic with the experience that people are going through at the moment. But there's an old saying in the military, and that is you can delegate tasks, but you can't delegate accountability. And it seems to me that at every turn, Premier Andrews does the best he can to avoid ever being held accountable for the decisions he makes. Now's probably not the time to be putting the screws on him, but we do need to at some point confront the reality that he contracts out supervision of quarantine because he doesn't want to be responsible if it goes to custody. He contracts out to a judicial inquiry, anything else that might particularly pose some risks so he can avoid questions about it. And that is not in the interests of Victorians. We really need Victorians to step up here in due course to make sure that they demand the accountability they deserve.
Well, let's go to Gareth Ward. Now, Gareth, Andrews doesn't have it on his own. I mean, the New South Wales government is responsible for this appalling fiasco, the Ruby Princess. And just as Daniel Andrews says, I've got an inquiry, I won't answer questions about the quarantine fiasco, the Berejiklian government says, no, we've got an inquiry into the Ruby Princess, I won't ask questions. Amanda's just talked about accountability. Where is the accountability? Gareth Ward.
Alan, the COVID-19 virus was on the Ruby Princess before it even arrived in Australian waters, and I think we need to acknowledge that that was very early on when we were still learning a lot about this virus, but we've learned a lot as a state, and I think we can be very proud of our response. Look, it doesn't matter where this virus is in Australia. We've seen devastating effects on businesses, on jobs, and as has been frequently said, we're all in this together. Everyone's just trying to...
Yeah, but hang on. You're sounding like Daniel Andrews. I'm asking you about the Ruby Princess. We haven't got any answers. Gladys won't answer them. You won't answer the question simply because you say, oh, there is an inquiry. Now, let me go to Chris Minns. Chris Minns is on the other side. He's in the Labor opposition in New South Wales. Chris, how do you see this Ruby Princess fiasco?
Yeah, it's a big problem for New South Wales and Australia. The answers haven't been forthcoming from the New South Wales government, shrouded in secrecy. I think Greg Sheridan's labelled the Andrews government the worst. I mean, New South Wales has not answered any of the serious questions about Ruby Princess, how it docked in New South Wales.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I've just got to say, sorry to interrupt you, Chris. I've just got to say to our viewers, the Ruby Princess is the greatest source of infections in the country. The Ruby Princess, the thing that birthed in New South Wales, and they didn't even wait until people had been checked as to their infections. Chris, I'm sorry, on you go.
Given warnings before it docked, Alan. Given warnings before it docked. Obviously a huge blunder at the hands of the New South Wales government. And look, I don't think people expect miracles when it comes to these things, but be honest with the public. Explain what happened and give some confidence that it's not going to happen again. That's the key to get through these serious issues, I think.
Tanya, can I just come to you on this question of ideology? Because whenever you go into an election, the Liberal Party wear the mantle of economic responsibility. Now, of course, through circumstances which have changed, we've got piles of debt, massive spending, job seeker, job maker, job keeper, all these sort of names, and the money keeps on going. And as a result, we've tipped in 10%, 10.6%, 11% of GDP. I think we've got a table here which we'll show in a moment for all of that. What do you make of that? I mean, how can, in an election campaign, for example, that be defended?
Well, Alan, I think you remember, as I remember, the debt and deficit disaster campaign that was run against Labor. And in fact, even before the bushfires, even before COVID-19, the Liberals had doubled debt in Australia. We went into this crisis with high unemployment, high underemployment, low wages growth, low business confidence, low business investment, a range of things that made our economy weak already. When it comes to the spending, there are elements of this spending that we're very supportive of, and that includes the wages subsidy, JobKeeper. But, Alan, I don't really understand some of the elements of JobKeeper. For example, I don't understand why the old Qantas catering workers, because their company's been sold, these workers who've been working in the same jobs for 20 or 30 years, but the business has been sold over the top of their heads, they don't get JobKeeper. But a uni student who's been working, you know, a shift a week at a bakery or a cafe, they get $750 a week, in many cases, to stay home, to be doing nothing. So I think it's a good idea, but in many respects very poorly implemented.
Yeah, I mean, casuals who were on $200 a week before the pandemic now automatically get $750. Amanda Stoker is one of the most articulate people in relation to liberal philosophy. You'd regard her as a true liberal, and many people see her as a real hope of the side. Are you comfortable with this massive expenditure, enormous debt, and it continues on when you're having a look at 11% of GDP? That's almost double, for example, of Britain's, and if you take India, India's expenditure on this is 0.7% of GDP. Are you comfortable with this?
Like all Australians, this should be something we're uncomfortable with, because it is a burden that needs to be borne by every Australian sooner or later. And so we need to be really cautious when we make a decision to go into debt like this. But for most people, the economy means, do I have a job this week? Can I pay my bills? Can I support my family? And the Coalition's doing absolutely everything it possibly can to make sure the answer to all of those three questions is always yes.
Right.
The reason we're able to have some room to move to make these kinds of calls at this difficult point in time is because of the responsible economic management we've had since 2013.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Gareth. Gareth, how do you see all of this? It is a massive pile, isn't it? There's going to be a lot of work needed to recover.
Well, we've made some really tough decisions in New South Wales, Alan. We've done things like pause public sector wages so we could inject those funds back into job-generating infrastructure. In fact, as a state, we have half the debt of it, the next state as a percentage of GSP, but double the infrastructure investment. Could you contrast that with state Labor that went to the last election increasing taxes on farmers, on small business, on first home buyers? We've cut taxes, billions of dollars of taxes, and that puts us as a state in a good position, not just to drive the New South Wales economy, but the rest of the nation. So we've made some tough decisions, but we're investing the money where it's required, and that's why we're in a position, because of that strong economic management, to invest in job-generating infrastructure.
Well, Chris, how do you see that? Chris Minns, who's on the other side of the fence from Gareth. How do you see that, Chris?
No, rubbish, Alan. I mean, they've been running around for the last 2 weeks trying to increase the GST, put it on food, bring in congestion-based tolling and put a land tax on everybody. I mean, where's the tax cut? We need to drive some domestic demand in the
Where were your
New
tax
South Wales
cuts? You wanted to
economy.
increase taxes on farmers. You wanted to put taxes on tractors.
Mate. At the end of the day,
taxes on tractors,
trying to put a GST
on farmers, on small business people.
Fresh food, making life harder for households right across
You would
New
have
South
smashed
Wales
the economy.
at a time when the
Thank goodness you don't run the economy like you run your party.
Years. I mean, look, this is very dangerous stuff. In the UK today, Alan, VAT and consumption taxes cut. VAT and consumption taxes cut. In New South Wales, they're trying to jack them up.
All right. Well, now, look, we've got a bit of spirit and fire, which is what we want. You are all very polite and cautious to start with because it's our first night out. But look, we'll leave it there for all of you. No, we won't. I just want to ask one question to perhaps the two federal ladies. Today, Prime Minister Morrison made a statement about Hong Kong. I mean, given that Hong Kong is a very well-educated, shouldn't we, and he's, I think, suggesting this will happen, we will allow these people to come to Australia and they may be very good in regenerating the economy. Tanya, a quick one on that from you.
Look, I think we're all watching with a great deal of concern what's happening in Hong Kong, and it's so very disappointing that the one country, two systems commitments that were given by China have not been adhered to. Of course, I think it's the right thing to do to offer the safe haven to anybody who might be locked up just for expressing a political opinion. What a shocking thing.
I agree with you. Tanya, well done. Amanda?
I'm really relieved to see this commitment come out of the government. It's something that I've been hoping for some time, and it's really encouraging to see that a cohort of people who are not only highly skilled and potentially able to contribute a great deal to our economy, but who also face great difficulty in expressing basic opinions in their current hometown, have the option to come here.
Yeah, and so there will be no extradition treaty. Well done. So that's Tanya. Thank you, Tanya and Amanda and Chris and Gareth. And we'll see you all next week, and we'll crank it up a little bit.